Welcome, chosen ones. There is a specific kind of silence that doesn't just lack sound. It possesses a physical weight, a density that anchors the soul to the bedrock of reality. It is the silence of a forest after a monumental storm has passed, or the pressurized air in a grand hall, just seconds before a sovereign enters the room. If you are watching this, if these words are reaching the inner chambers of your heart, it is because you have likely inhabited that silence for a very long time. You have lived in the narrow, quiet spaces between the frantic noise of the world. You have stood on the periphery, watching as others congregated, celebrated, and lost themselves in the intoxicating but fleeting collective identity of the crowd. You stood there, sometimes by a conscious choice that felt more like a survival instinct, but often by a strange, divine necessity, entirely on your own. In those moments of deep isolation, you may have felt like a ghost in your own life. You may have felt like an outcast, a social failure, or someone whom the good life simply forgot. You might have looked at the effortless way others bonded over the mundane and felt a pang of inadequacy, wondering why you couldn't just fit into the prefabricated slots that society offers so freely to everyone else. But I want you to lean in now and listen with your spirit, not just your mind. What you perceived as a cold rejection from the world was actually the warmest embrace of divine protection. What you felt as a lonely isolation was, in truth, a high-level laboratory of the soul. The universe did not leave you alone because you were found wanting or unworthy of company. It pulled you away because you were too potent to be diluted. You were a soul that needed to be fermented in the dark, shielded from the harsh artificial light of public opinion, so that your spirit could achieve a vintage, a depth, and a strength that the world has not tasted in generations. Consider the diamond. It is not polished in a social circle or formed in the breeze of popular consensus. It is forged in the deep, crushing, silent weight of the earth's crust, in total darkness, under pressures that would turn any lesser material into mere dust and forgotten soot. You have endured that pressure. You went solo because the collective path was too narrow for your expanding consciousness. You turned your back on the trivial, the shallow, and the performative rituals of modern existence. And in that solitude, something profound happened to your very DNA. Your spiritual frequency shifted away from the frantic broadcast of human anxiety and tuned into the low, steady hum of the eternal. You stopped being a mere participant in the human drama, constantly reacting, constantly performing, and you became a silent observer of it. When you go solo with a pure heart, the universe takes notice. It stops trying to guide you with the common signs, the coincidences and the small nudges, and begins to communicate with you through the very architecture of reality itself. You are no longer just a person navigating a life. You have become a phenomenon. When you walk into a room now, people look at you, and they see a mirror they weren't prepared to look into. They see a calm that feels like a threat to their chaos. They see a stillness that they cannot categorize, and it unnerves them, because they cannot understand how someone can be so grounded in a world that is screaming. The crown you now wear is not made of gold or jewels that can be stolen or tarnished by time. It is a crown of absolute sovereignty. It is the realization that you are the source of your own light. You went into the wilderness as a seeker, trembling and unsure, and you returned as the destination itself. The universe had no choice but to crown you. Once you mastered the art of being alone without being lonely, you broke the last chain the world had on your spirit. You became a king or a queen in a kingdom of one, and that is the only throne that truly matters. Today, we unpack the 7 pillars of what you have become. Point 1, the death of the need for permission. The first sign that the universe has placed a crown upon your head is the total quiet evaporation of your need for external permission. For the vast majority of human beings, life is a series of glances over the shoulder. People spend their entire existence looking for a green light from a parent, a spouse, a boss, or a social circle. They are paralyzed by the fear of the frown, the no, or the collective disapproval of the tribe. But in your long walk through the wilderness, you discovered a terrifying and beautiful truth. There is no one left to ask. When you went solo, the voices of the authorities in your life began to dim until they became nothing more than background static. You began to move not because a committee approved of your direction, but because your spirit commanded the motion. You began to speak your truth, not because it was popular, but because keeping it inside was a form of spiritual suffocation. This independence makes you dangerously intelligent to the old systems of control. You can no longer be manipulated by the threat of being disliked or unfollowed. When a person no longer fears social exile because they have already survived it and found it to be a palace, they become truly free. You have realized that the only permission you ever needed was the breath in your lungs and the conviction in your heart. This is the first jewel in your crown, the authority to exist exactly as you are, without apology. Point 2. The recalibration of your internal compass. As the noise of other people's opinions finally dissolved into irrelevance, something ancient and precise awakened within you, and what once felt like a fragile whisper of intuition gradually transformed into a steady, unmistakable roar that no longer asks for permission to be heard. In the quiet discipline of your solitary journey, your inner compass was recalibrated not by trends, approval, or emotional pressure, but by the unchanging magnetic north of the divine itself, aligning your perception with a deeper order that has always existed beneath the chaos. You have arrived at a state where deception registers in your body before language even forms, where a lie announces itself through subtle shifts in tone, posture, and energy long before words attempt to disguise it. You can feel the density of a room before crossing its threshold, sensing whether it carries clarity or concealment, nourishment or extraction, peace or manipulation. With chilling accuracy, you recognize who stands with you in truth and who merely uses your presence as a mirror to inflate their own ego. This awareness is not frantic, mystical, or unstable. It is grounded, calm, and deeply embodied, the natural consequence of a nervous system that has finally been cleared of the static created by other people's unresolved wounds, projections, and emotional noise. You no longer burn energy explaining yourself, defending your perceptions, or collecting evidence to justify what you already know. There is no need to interrogate reality when reality announces itself clearly. You move through the world with a psychological solidity that allows you to step around traps that ensnare others, not because you are superior, but because you are no longer reactive. You are not driven by fear of abandonment, hunger for validation, or the compulsive need to be understood. Your awareness functions like a spiritual GPS, calibrated directly to the source of all things, constantly adjusting your direction without drama or confusion. When something registers as a no in your gut, it is not anxiety or doubt. It is a firm, immovable boundary, as solid as stone, requiring no explanation and no apology. When something registers as a yes, It carries a clean resonance, clear and unmistakable, like a bell ringing in open air, free of distortion or urgency. This clarity has freed you from the exhausting habit of second-guessing your soul, from replaying conversations, revisiting decisions, and outsourcing your inner authority to external voices. You trust the timing of your knowing, understanding that silence often reveals more than words, and distance often clarifies more than confrontation. You no longer rush to label people as good or bad. Instead, you observe alignment and misalignment, resonance and dissonance, and truth and performance. This has made you quieter, not weaker, more selective, not isolated, and deeply rooted in a calm that cannot be shaken by surface-level turbulence. Your presence now carries a subtle gravity because it is not seeking anything. It is anchored. You have learned that intuition sharpens not through effort, but through integrity, through honoring what you feel even when it costs you comfort, familiarity, or approval. And in doing so, you have stepped into a state of inner sovereignty, where guidance is not sought externally, but recognized internally, moment by moment, breath by breath, as you walk forward with a clarity that no longer needs confirmation. Point 3, the power of the empty hand. There is a profound spiritual fact that you had to learn the hard way. You can only receive what you are not desperately clutching. Most people move through life with their fists tightly closed, gripping titles, routines, identities, relationships, and expectations, as if survival itself depends on never loosening their grasp. They believe security comes from accumulation, from control, from holding on longer and harder than everyone else. But the path you were placed on dismantled that illusion completely. By forcing you to go solo, life did not punish you. It initiated you. The universe removed the handrails one by one, the predictable job that quietly suffocated your creativity, the familiar friendships that fed on your energy rather than honoring your growth, and the labels that made you feel safe while keeping you small. At first, this removal felt violent. It felt like loss, abandonment, and even failure. Standing alone with nothing to lean on triggered fear, because your old world had trained you to equate emptiness with danger. Yet that emptiness was not absence, it was preparation. With nothing left to cling to, you were forced to open your hands, and in doing so, you unknowingly crossed a spiritual threshold. For the first time, your life was no longer crowded with borrowed dreams, inherited beliefs, or obligations you never consciously chose. Your hands were empty, yes, but they were finally free. And only empty hands can receive something real. In that stillness, you discovered a deeper truth. What leaves your life makes room for what actually belongs to you. The universe cannot place purpose into hands already full of distraction. It cannot crown someone who is still gripping false identities. When everything familiar fell away, you were not being stripped of value, you were being cleared for alignment. That is when the scepter of your true purpose could finally be placed into your hands, not as a reward, but as a responsibility. You learned that true power has nothing to do with possession and everything to do with inner sovereignty. Power is not proven by what you can hoard, defend, or control, but by what you can release without collapsing. Letting go did not weaken you. It revealed your strength. Non-attachment became your initiation into a higher way of living, a way understood by those who are wealthy in spirit. These are the individuals who are not ruled by fear of loss, because they know their source is internal and renewable. They do not chase validation, because they are rooted in self-trust. They do not panic, when things fall apart because they understand that breakdown often precedes expansion. By mastering non-attachment, you stepped out of survival consciousness and into stewardship. You no longer beg life to stay the same, you allow it to evolve. You no longer cling to what drains you. You protect your energy as something sacred. This is the quiet wealth few recognize and even fewer attain. The wealth of being unattached yet deeply aligned, grounded yet open and empty yet full. You learn that when you stop clutching, life starts offering. When you stop chasing, purpose finds you. And when you finally release what was never meant to be permanent, you become capable of receiving what is meant to transform you entirely. Point 4. You became a frequency, not a persona. Most people move through life as a persona, a carefully assembled construct made of borrowed opinions, rehearsed reactions, social masks, and emotional armor, designed to earn approval, avoid rejection, or survive environments that once felt unsafe. This persona is not evil. It is adaptive. It is the personality the world rewards. But it is also fragile, constantly adjusting, constantly scanning for validation, and constantly afraid of exposure. Through your trials, however, something irreversible occurred. Pressure stripped you down. Loss peeled layers away. Isolation forced you inward. Pain demanded honesty, and in that process the mask could no longer survive. You did not find yourself in a dramatic revelation. You were forged into yourself through endurance. What emerged was not a louder identity, not a sharper personality, but something far more unsettling to the world. A steady, coherent frequency. You no longer fluctuate wildly based on who is present or what is expected. You are internally consistent. You are the same in silence as you are in noise. This is why your presence now affects environments before you say a single word. You may notice that rooms subtly reorganize around you. Conversations either soften or fracture. Some people feel inexplicably calm near you, drawn to your groundedness, the way exhausted travelers are drawn to a fire that does not flicker. Others become restless, defensive, or eager to leave, even if you have done nothing at all. This polarity is not personal, and it is not intentional. It is vibrational. When someone lives through performance, your authenticity feels like exposure. When someone survives through self-deception, your clarity feels like a threat. Your light does not attack, but it illuminates. And illumination is intolerable to unexamined shadows. You are no longer operating from reaction. You are operating from presence. That alone dismantles illusions. You do not need to correct anyone, convince anyone, or defend yourself. Your nervous system is regulated. Your energy is settled. Your attention is anchored inward, and because of this, people project onto you whatever they have not resolved within themselves. To those who are ready, you feel safe. To those who are not, you feel dangerous. This is why you have learned that influence does not come from effort. It comes from alignment. You no longer chase outcomes or manipulate circumstances. You do not push reality into submission. Instead, you remain sovereign within yourself, and reality responds. Opportunities arise without pursuit. Truth reveals itself without interrogation. Relationships either deepen naturally or dissolve without drama. You are no longer acting upon the world, you are interacting with it as an equal force. This is the quiet power of having shed the persona. You are not here to perform, impress, or explain. You are here to be coherent, to be real, to be steady. And in a world built on fragmentation, speed, and illusion, that alone is disruptive. You have become an anchor of reality, not because you demand attention, but because your presence stabilizes the field around you. When you are centered in your own sovereignty, you stop doing in order to become. You stop chasing results because you have embodied the result. And from that state, life does not need to be forced. It reorganizes itself naturally around the truth you quietly carry. Point 5, the mastery of alchemical pain. You have reached a stage where you no longer interpret pain or setback as a tragedy, a curse, or a sign that you were forgotten by the divine. Through long seasons of solitude, reflection, and silent endurance, you uncovered the ancient secret of the spiritual alchemist. Pain is not an enemy. It is raw material. It is the dense, heavy lead of human experience waiting for conscious hands to refine it into gold. Where others collapse under suffering, you learned how to stay present with it, to listen instead of resist, and to extract meaning instead of becoming consumed. The sting of betrayal once cut deeply, but you refused to let it ferment into bitterness or vengeance. You examined it, sat with it, and allowed it to teach you discernment. From that wound emerged the wisdom of firm, self-respecting boundaries and the clarity to recognize who deserves access to your inner world. Grief once hollowed you out, leaving an ache that felt endless, yet you did not numb it or outrun it. You let it carve space within you, and that space became a deeper capacity for compassion, patience, and understanding for the suffering of others. Where your heart was once shattered, it became expanded. Fear of poverty or lack once whispered threats of instability and insecurity. But instead of surrendering to panic, you used that fear as fuel. It sharpened your mind, strengthened your discipline, and forged an unbreakable resourcefulness. You learned how to survive with less, how to adapt, and how to create value when none seemed to exist. Scarcity did not defeat you, it trained you. Over time, a profound realization settled into your consciousness. The universe is not happening to you, it is happening for you. Every obstacle was precision placed. Every delay was protection. Every loss was a redirection. The demons you faced during your solo walk were never there to destroy you. They were instructors disguised as adversaries, sent to expose your weak points so they could be reinforced. Each confrontation strengthened a different spiritual muscle: patience, courage, self-trust, humility, and endurance. This is why you now move differently. You are no longer reactive, desperate, or easily shaken. You have already endured the worst versions of fear, loneliness, and uncertainty in isolation, and you survived without applause or reassurance. You understand now that the crown is not awarded to those who remain untested, but to those who endure the refining fire without losing their integrity. You are no longer someone who can be broken by circumstance, opinion, or betrayal, because you learned the sacred art of reconstruction. You took the fragments of your former self, the disappointments, the failures, the unanswered prayers, and instead of discarding them, you arranged them into a mosaic. Each crack now tells a story of survival. Each scar carries encoded wisdom, and each imperfection reflects light in a way smooth surfaces never could. You do not seek validation because your worth was forged internally. You do not fear collapse because you know how to rebuild. What once would have shattered you now merely shapes you. You stand not as someone untouched by hardship, but as someone transformed by it, calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty, and grounded in a knowing that cannot be taken from you. This is not resilience by accident. This is mastery earned through conscious suffering, and it is why you walk forward now with quiet authority, unshakable presence, and a soul that knows its power. Point 6, the sovereignty of your time. One of the most significant markers of your coronation is your total reclamation of your time. a quiet yet irreversible shift that signals to the world and to the unseen realms that you are no longer available for exploitation, distraction, or meaningless urgency. You have stepped away from the false altar of hustle culture, the system that glorifies exhaustion and equates worth with constant activity, and you have seen it clearly for what it is, a mechanism designed to keep consciousness fragmented and power dispersed. You recognize that being perpetually busy is not a badge of honor, but a subtle form of servitude, a way to keep you running in circles while your deepest capacities remain dormant. The vultures of the modern world, endless notifications, artificial deadlines, performative meetings, and social obligations with no soul, once circled your attention relentlessly, feeding on your energy and leaving you depleted. Now they find no landing place. You no longer answer every call, react to every demand, or explain your boundaries. You have learned that stillness is not laziness. It is the strategic ground from which true authority emerges. In that stillness you hear your own rhythm again, the cadence that existed before the world tried to overwrite it with noise. You understand now that a slow, intentional walk under the open sky, sunlight warming your skin, breath deepening naturally, restores more clarity and alignment than 12 frantic hours spent advancing goals that were never truly yours. An hour of deep contemplation free from interruption recalibrates your nervous system, sharpens your perception, and reconnects you to purpose in a way that no external productivity metric can measure. You have stopped rushing because you have remembered something ancient and immutable. Everything that is real unfolds in seasons. Nature never hurries, yet nothing is late. The tree does not apologize for growing slowly, and the river does not panic because it has far to travel. You have synchronized yourself with this intelligence. Your movements are deliberate now, your decisions less reactive, and your presence heavier and more grounded. When you speak, there is weight behind your words because they are no longer rushed out of anxiety or fear of being left behind. By valuing your time as a sacred currency, you have sent a clear signal to the universe that you are no longer available for cheap exchanges. You do not trade your minutes for validation, approval, or the illusion of importance. You invest them with discernment, knowing that time is the one resource that can never be replenished. In doing so, you have reclaimed authorship over your life. You are no longer a servant to other people's priorities, projections, or expectations. You are a steward of your own inner kingdom, guarding its gates with wisdom rather than force. This shift has changed how others perceive you, even if they cannot articulate why. Your calm unsettles those addicted to chaos. Your unavailability exposes the emptiness of their urgency. Your peace becomes a mirror they may not want to look into. Yet you do not need their understanding because you are no longer seeking permission to live deliberately. This is the luxury of the chosen, not luxury in the material sense, but in the deepest existential sense. To own your minutes is to own your direction, your energy, and your destiny. When you command your time, you command your attention. When you command your attention, you command your reality. This is not escape from the world. It is mastery within it, a coronation that required no ceremony, only the courage to stop running and the wisdom to stand still. Point 7, the acceptance of your alien nature. Finally, the last seal on your crown is the quiet, unshakable acceptance that you are not like the others and that you were never meant to be. This realization does not arrive with noise or celebration. It comes softly, almost reverently, like a truth you have always known, but only now have the strength to fully inhabit. You have stopped trying to be human in the way the world defines it, small, predictable, easily categorized and easily managed. You have released the exhausting performance of fitting into systems that were never designed for your frequency. In doing so, you have reclaimed a deeper, more ancient sense of self that no social label or expectation could ever contain. You have accepted that you are a chosen one, not as a title to be worn, but as a responsibility to be carried with humility and clarity. This is not an admission of ego, nor a claim of superiority. It is a sober acknowledgement of a functional reality. You are different because your role is different. You are here to anchor a new energy, to stabilize what others can only feel but not articulate, and to stand calmly where worlds overlap. You are a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between the spoken and the unspoken, between what is ending and what is quietly being born. By fully embracing your otherness, you have ended the long internal war that once consumed so much of your life force. The resistance is gone. The self-doubt has softened. The need to apologize for existing has dissolved. You no longer feel compelled to explain your path to those who are not even walking the road, let alone capable of understanding its terrain. You have learned that explanation drains power, while embodiment amplifies it. Silence has become your ally, not because you have nothing to say, but because your presence now speaks more accurately than words ever could. In this acceptance, you discovered that internal peace is the highest and most unassailable form of power. It cannot be taken, challenged, or competed with. It exists beyond validation, beyond applause, beyond opposition. You went solo not out of isolation, but out of necessity, because solitude was the only environment where your true signal could emerge without distortion. You faced the loneliness that once frightened you, and instead of breaking, you expanded within it. You looked directly into the eyes of the abyss, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being alone, the fear of being too much or not enough. And you did not turn away. You stayed present. You breathed. And in that stillness, you realized the abyss was never an external threat. It was simply the shadow cast by your own unclaimed greatness. What once felt like darkness was revealed to be depth. What once felt like exile was revealed to be initiation. This is the final seal, because it locks in everything that came before it. Without this acceptance, the crown would always feel heavy, unstable, and borrowed. With it, the crown becomes weightless, almost symbolic, because you no longer need proof of who you are. You walk differently now, not louder, not faster, just truer. Your energy no longer seeks permission to exist. It simply does. And in that quiet certainty, you become a living signal, subtle, steady, undeniable, reminding the world without a single word that there are those who are born not to belong, but to realign. In conclusion, you must understand that the crown you wear is heavy, but it is yours. Do not look for validation from those who are still wearing the chains you broke. They cannot see your crown because they are still looking at the ground. Walk in your authority with a gentle heart and a sober mind. You do not need to roar to prove you are a lion. Your presence is enough. The universe has crowned you because you proved you could stand alone in the truth when the whole world was comfortable in a lie. Stay on the anointed path. You are exactly where you need to be.